Hello and welcome to the March 2022 Recreational Astronomy Night Meeting online edition of the RASC Toronto Centre. My name is Paul Markov, coming to you from Markham, Ontario. And as I've mentioned many times, I'm always on the lookout for presenters. So if you have a presentation in mind, or if you know of someone who could present, please get in touch with me. We do have 2 openings for the April meeting. And just a reminder that our meetings are held on the first Wednesday of each month at this moment in time. Before we start with the presentations, I'd like to recognize our world-class technical team made up of Andrew and Betty Reed, Emma Seabrook, and Ward Legros. Thank you for making these presentations possible for all of us. We have 3 speakers this evening, and we should be done no later than 9:30. The speakers are Denis Grey with The Sky This Month. Then we're going to have John Reed and Chris Vaughan presenting together on their new book, which is called Introducing 110 Things to See with a Telescope, um, a new book for finding and viewing the Messier objects. And then finally, we're going to have Denis Zaytsev. He is a software engineer that works on the 30-meter telescope. And he'll talk to us about the TMT, the new generation of ground-based observatories. And then our president, Tom Luton, will close the meeting with announcements as usual. If you have any questions for our speakers, please enter them in the YouTube chat box, and Emma will ask your questions to the speaker on your behalf. And then if you're attending the meeting for the first time, please let us know through the chat box as well. So let's get the meeting started with Denis Grey and the sky this month.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Paul, for the introduction. As Paul probably mentioned, I'm sorry I can't be with you live tonight, but I'm going to review the sky this month with you in any case, and my good friend Chris Vaughan is going to answer any questions that might come up, because I know he's on top of this with his weekly Skylights series that he's doing, and he's also been a regular contributor here. So thanks in advance, Chris, for addressing any questions that we might have. So let's go and have a little look at where we are. As usual, I'm going to start with the big picture just to try and put everybody in context, talk about some of the highlights that we see coming up this month. It's a bit of a dry month, but we're going to make as much fun of it as we can. Talk about planets, the moons, as well as comets and other targets in this season of galaxies. So first of all, I think it's worthy to take a look again at the big picture. This graph that I get from moonwise.co.uk shows an all sky map, and it's really nice because it's sort of oversized, shows you the planets and the moon in a bit of an oversized way, and it shows constellation figures that make sense here. So we can see where we are kind of in this moment in time. This is where the moon will be mid-month when it's full. And we can see here that in the evening sky, we have pretty well no planets anymore. We've got Uranus heading, diving towards the sun. Not, as everyone knows, not a terribly impressive telescopic sight. Certainly not something you can spot naked eye that near the horizon. But all of the planets are still there. They're just all piled up in the morning sky. And we'll be talking a little bit about that and how there's some nice conjunction action going on there later in the month. But for the moment, if you're looking for anything to see in planetary terms in the evening sky, there's just nothing there. One thing that you may notice is the winter hexagon, which is a big asterism, which is normally visible during the winter season, kind of connecting Capella in as well as the twins in Gemini, going through Procyon, Sirius anchors at the bottom, and then it touches Orion, as well as Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. So that pattern is pretty large. It's one of the largest asterisms that we know, but it sort of anchors the winter sky, and it's kind of similar to the summer triangle, which you can see up here. Deneb, Vega, and Altair starting to make its appearance and become known in this part of the season. One of the things about this season is that the summer action, all of the objects and so on, are showing up in the morning. So if you're able to stay up late this time of year, you can see the best of the winter Milky Way as well as the best of the summer Milky Way, as long as you're willing to stay up late enough. In terms of where we are with the overall period of darkness that we have, right now we are running at about 9 hours and 34 minutes of dark, full dark, at each night. And we are in that transition phase as we head toward the equinox this month, where the rate of change is accelerating, and we're losing about 4 minutes a day now of darkness as we go towards the equinox. And in fact, by this time next month, we'll have lost an entire hour and 40 minutes or so of dark by the time that we reach April. And you do notice this, obviously in your day-to-day life, but as also as astronomers, this is kind of important to note that a clear sky in April will give you a lot more night than a clearer sky in May, because this effect accelerates through here and then as we get near the summer solstice, the nights stay short for a while around the June solstice. So keep that in mind. Also, something to keep in mind: this discontinuity represents the return of daylight savings time. Boo! Yes. But daylight savings time does have an effect on everybody, of course, and it will basically bump everything back an hour and result in more twilight time, later sunsets, and a little bit of less time in the morning, which is generally good, I think, for most of us. But I wish they wouldn't do it. I'm increasingly aware of how it affects me the following couple of days after the time change, and I think I'd rather we just stuck with daylight savings time all year round. It would make life easier. So one other thing I just like to point out here a bit is just in terms of where we are in terms of what we are looking at. So as the Earth goes around the sun, and the night sky of the Earth, you can think of it as a big circle. And as the Earth goes around the sun, our night hemisphere points towards different things out there in the galaxy. And what's happening now as we go through this annual pattern, we're moving away from the winter Milky Way, represented by things like Orion, and that whole light Milky Way that we see there. We're moving towards the spring. And as we move towards the spring, we're looking outside of our galaxy. We're looking straight up, if you will, away from towards the north. And as a result, there's not much in the way of galactic things to see this month. And that's the impact of that as we go out of the winter time and through to the spring. In terms of what we can see, I mentioned the winter hexagon earlier. We've got the really pretty star cluster of the Pleiades, and the Hyades are still visible around sunset, along with Orion's belt. All of this stuff is visible now towards pretty well right after dark. You can get out there and see those. Not much more time left before those things will disappear. Gemini is at its height here. And one of the things I always like to think about when I'm looking at Gemini and Cancer is this is actually on the ecliptic, and this is exactly where the sun is going to be at its most high come June. So we're a quarter of the year away, and basically in 3 months' time, the sun will move from the horizon to Cancer or so. And when it's at that point, that's when we're going to have our longest day. So if you look up and see where Cancer or better or easier to see is Gemini, that'll remind you of where the sun's going to be when it gets warm. Trailing behind Cancer, we have Leo, and that is where the galaxies are very clustered, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Let's talk a little bit about planets. So I mentioned, that all of the planets are kind of clustered really close to the morning sky right now. Mercury is pretty well invisible. I may have been able to spot it if you were really up early this morning, but basically it's going to be gone for the rest of the month. Venus and Mars are both in the morning sky. They're reported to be all right tonight, and they are essentially there if you're able to get up early and get a good clear horizon. Jupiter is pretty well behind the sun now. It's going to be reaching sort of a superior conjunction in the next couple of days. It'll come back in April, so there's not much to see there. But Saturn is in the process of finishing its round about the sun, and it's going to be coming back into view mid-month or so and getting involved in the excitement of the conjunctions that we're expecting to see late in March. Some notable get-togethers that we will see in the sky, in the morning sky: Venus and Mars. I told you they were all right tonight. They're going to be within about 4 degrees of each other on March 15th, so that's close to Wednesday. That's our next meeting. So it's something to look for as you're heading up, getting up in the morning. And it should be, this is the best day, is the 15th, but you should be able to see them fairly close together for a day before or after. Then sort of the highlight of this month, March 27th through the 29th, we've got Venus, Saturn, Mars, and the Moon all together in Capricornus, all together near dawn. And they're going to be doing a little bit of shifting of positions around. and adjusting their positions there. But this is a nice opportunity for a wide-angle photo that will show sort of most of the planets in the solar system all together, hanging out together, and potentially a really excellent photo opportunity. The evening sky this month, not as much to talk about. We've got March 8th, we've got the crescent moon nearing Pleiades and Hyades. On March 15th, there's an occultation expected of Eta Leonis, which is a magnitude 3.5 star, pretty bright, which will be occulted by the dark edge of the moon as it goes through. That should be visible in binoculars, and you should be able to watch the star get closer and closer to the moon's edge and then suddenly go poof, disappear. So that's something else to look for at our next meeting. And I'll hope that maybe Chris or someone can bring our attention to that in terms of the timing, and maybe we'll adjourn for 10 minutes so people can go out and see it. Talk about, right. The moon this month is going through its normal phases. Right now, we are just moments ago, we had our new moon, so the moon is out of the way for the moment. And this weekend coming, weather permitting, would be a good weekend for deep sky observing. First quarter is coming up on March 10th. We have our full moon in the middle of the month on the 18th. This is sometimes known as the worm moon. I don't get too hung up on those moon names because it seems every area and cultural group and region has their own set of these names for these moons. So it's useful to sort of put it in context of the spring. And I'm sure the Maori people in New Zealand would not be thinking spring thoughts here; they'd be thinking fall thoughts. So each moon has its own name. And the equinox is coming up, 11:33 a.m. Brace yourself on March 20th because it's going to come, boom, and then we'll be moving forward into the longer days than night. There's a couple of comets that you could have a gander at or have a search for this month. We have comet Borley, which is a periodic comet, number 19. Currently in the constellation Aries, about magnitude 9.5. So you can pull that in with probably a 5-inch telescope or a 3-inch telescope, maybe with a little bit of camera help, depending on your sky conditions and so forth. And then there's a non-periodic comet, Atlas 2019 L3. This is a current light curve of it. So you can see here that this comet started at magnitude 18, worked its way up quite nicely over the past year, and seems to have kind of reached its peak just a little bit below 8th magnitude, and is now kind of fading a bit, but still at a respectable 9.5 magnitude, and in Gemini, which means it's directly overhead, which makes that comet potentially more reachable or easy to spot than other comets would be. So again, worth an opportunity. As I reported last March when I did the sky this month, there is still no notable meteor activity expected in March. Sorry, but the Lyrids are coming up in late April, and whoever takes the sky this month, next month, will be able to tell you all about meteors then. Zodiacal light is in season here in March. So each year, as the ecliptic sort of moves up and down, it lines up so that it's at a good angle at sunset. So again, if we kind of go back here, I'm just going to skip back, and you can kind of see here, maybe not the best view, but see how the ecliptic is kind of going at a 90-degree angle to the horizon. And that's the condition that we need in order to see the zodiacal light. So the zodiacal light is the faint dust left by millions of comets over the years, and it's floating around in the plane of the solar system. And when the plane of the solar system kind of comes straight up, we get our best view of that. It's high enough up and away enough from the horizon that you can distinctly see this sort of V-shaped glow on the horizon, provided you have a very dark sight. So you need kind of clear skies, dark sight, and a bit of patience, and you can see that V-shaped glow and know that you're looking at the accumulated dust of billions of years of solar system history all floating around in the plane of our whole solar system. It's the kind of thing that often will show up really well on a photograph, like this one here, where you can take an exposure of a few, a minute or so and pull it out of the sky. But again, you need a dark sky, so it's one of those get out of town kind of phenomena if you want to see it. The minimum of Algol. So the Algol is this cool variable star that you're able to spot very easily. It goes from very bright to pretty bright and back on a regular schedule. The trick this month, of course, is that Perseus, the constellation that Algol is in, is starting to set, so we don't have that much time to observe this behavior. The best opportunity, I think, is the minimum on March 9th, where it hits its minimum right around 7 o'clock. So you would be able then to watch it brighten and keep an eye on it as you are going about your observing on March 9th. That's coming up a week today. Wanted to just highlight that there's a couple of really nice open clusters that are in their best position right now. M44 in Cancer. Again, that's classic. That's an old open cluster. You can compare and contrast that with a young open cluster like the Pleiades. So it's a little fainter, a little further away, but also older. So it's a cluster that's starting to show its age a bit. And M67 is another cluster that's in the same general field of view, even further away and fainter. So they're grouped together. And then M48 and Hydra, nice loose open group. It's a bit of a challenge object because you've got to get a good southern horizon for it. And it's one of those things that if you're doing the Messier Marathon, you need to make sure that you plan for that one in order to get it. Speaking of which, the Messier Marathon is open and season is open now. So we have our new moon weekend right now coming up. And that's an important part of doing your Messier Marathon. Now, for those of you that haven't heard of the Messier Marathon before, we're going to be talking more about the Messier objects in our next talk. But this is kind of what's going on with the Messier Marathon. So if you plot all of the Messier objects in the sky as represented by these little yellow icons here and so forth, you can see that they're scattered, some of the galaxies and so forth, like the galaxy clusters that we have here in Virgo and so on, are sort of in the middle of the sky. And then we have a lot of objects that follow the Milky Way as it goes about. So we have our winter Milky Way over here. You can see that's Orion. We have our summer Milky Way over here. There's Cygnus the Swan and so on. But at this particular moment in March, if you can see where the sunset horizon and the sunrise horizon is, it's possible to see all of the Messier objects, if you are, or almost all of the Messier objects, in a single night, depending on where you are in location. So you can see here, we have a difficult one, M30, which is a globular cluster, and it's just at the edge of the sunrise horizon. So you need to make sure that you catch that one, and that can be the difference between getting all of your Messier objects and not all of your Messier objects. Another classic difficult one here is M79. And where the horizon is depends on your latitude. So we as Canadians in our northern latitudes have more challenging horizons than people say in the southern United States, where their horizon will give them a little bit more leeway with this challenge in terms of catching all of these objects. But it's a worthy endeavor. It's something you should give a try once in a while. And hopefully, if we are able to get back in person again, it's the kind of activity that maybe next year as a club we could get out again and have a night, try and get all the Messier objects in one swell swoop. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of other things to see, the spring galaxies are up. This is, as I mentioned, we're looking straight out of the solar system. We don't have a lot of things in the way, which means we can see deep into deep space, and we can see all of the galaxies that are available to us. One easy place to look is in the Virgo cluster. So Denobla here is at the tail end of Leo the Lion, and just off of that and between Denobla and Vindemiatrix is the Virgo cluster. And basically, if you look up there on a good dark night, you should be able to spot some of these galaxies even with binoculars. The other great place to look for galaxies is actually in Leo itself, just below Leo the Lion here, we have a lot of galaxies as well. So again, you can spot these 5 are pretty easy to spot, and you would see them in binoculars as kind of smudges, but nevertheless, you're looking at a whole star city and a universe of its own, often several million light years away, and just extraordinary that you can see that light coming from that far away. Just stressing that you need dark skies, good clarity, all the best conditions to see galaxies and to enjoy a galaxy hunting expedition. In terms of bright asteroids, there's a few of them floating around, so I thought rather than focusing on one, I just sort of highlight a bunch of them. And there's a great site that I found, Astro Van Buitenen.nl in the Netherlands, and he basically maintains this active list of bright asteroids that are easy enough to spot, and he also provides a convenient star map so that you can plan your observing session here. So some of the brightest asteroids that I've highlighted here, Ceres around 8.2 magnitude, Iris and Messier around 9th, and Letitia here also around 9.9 magnitude. So all of those are spottable, and if you're planning to do any observing around these areas here, you might want to pick up an asteroid while you're at it. So that's available as well. In terms of the ISS this month, as usual, we've kind of got 2 seasons with the ISS. So as the ISS progresses through its orbit, we sometimes get morning passes when it appears in the morning and catches the morning sunlight and reflects it down to us, and evening passes where it catches the evening sunshine and reflects it down to us. As we get into towards the June equinox, we can actually have some evenings where we can see up to 5 passes in one night, because the ISS never actually completely gets out of the sunshine, so you can actually have a pass in the middle of the night. So that's something that we can look forward to in June. The morning passes are running from now till March 12th. Starting on the 16th, the ISS will move into the evening. I picked a good example here of one from the 16th itself. And I didn't record the date and time, whoopsie. But trust me, there is a really good pass that's happening around the middle of March. I believe it's around the 16th. And this particular one here gets up to magnitude 3.6. See, why did I remember that and not the date? But it also passes really close to the bright star Auriga, and also goes through the Hyades. So that's potentially a really cool pass, as well as good potential photo opportunity there. Speaking of the ISS, I'll just encourage folks again to have a look for ISS transit opportunities. So an ISS transit is a really cool thing, because if you pick the right date and time and you just go to the right place, you can just put your binoculars or telescope on the moon and you will see the ISS go boom, right in front of the moon. And the predictions are excellent now, so you're able to see that. So this is an example of one coming up on March 12th in the morning. The center line, which is where you would need to be to see it go boom in front of the moon, is outside of town up northeast towards Whitby. It's going over Whitby, Stouffville, heading up through Aurora area, Stainer, right over the CAO, in fact. So if anybody happened to be at the CAO this weekend coming up, you'd be able to spot this while you were there. Bit of a early in the morning, but still a cool thing to see. And depending on the where the ISS is in orbit, you can sometimes see it approaching the moon as it's coming up, if it's lit, or otherwise you just see it as a dark silhouette on the moon. But that's a cool option that you have there in terms of setting that up. So with that, I'll just conclude and saying that I hope that we all get to show up again in front of the Science Center and get participate in some of these activities that I know we've missed so much over this past couple of years. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in person at an upcoming meeting again soon. So I hope that we're able to do that. And with that, I will conclude and I'll hand it back to Paul and Chris. Thank you again, to see if we have any questions. Thank you again. Bye now.
All right, thank you so much, Denis. Now, if there are any questions, Chris Vaughan is going to take care of the answers. Let's go to Emma. Do we have any questions?
Hi. Yeah, so we actually didn't get any questions tonight.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Thank you, Emma, and thanks again to Denis Grey. Well, I think we're ready to move on to our next speakers. John Reed and Chris Vaughan will talk to us about their new book introducing 110 things.
Okay, let me try this.
So go ahead, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
No, I can't hear you. Of course, I'm gonna put the headphones back in and unmute us here. How's it going, Chris? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, excellent. You're in one ear. You're one ear, and I hear myself echoing here, but that's okay. Yeah. So I'll introduce myself. I am John Reed. I'm gonna pull these headphones off because I can't hear myself through the echo there. Yeah, so I am the author, along with Chris, of 110 Things to See with a Telescope. I'm based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia here, and we're just between two snowstorms here, so good time to be in Halifax. Yeah, so I basically am an author and YouTuber of all things astronomy right now, and to give you some background, I've been observing for about 10 years and doing outreach at the same time. And so I started actually when I was an accountant in corporate finance in San Francisco, and I started volunteering with the Mount Diablo Astronomical Society there, and we had almost no clouds, and which was fantastic. So like 4 nights a week, no clouds, and I found that there was a problem people having. They had telescopes and didn't know where to point them, and so I put all my thoughts down in a book called 50 Things to See with a Small Telescope, and that book was an unintentional success. And basically, I had so much fun with that book and so much fun working with the folks in the astronomy club there that I quit my job, moved to Canada, got an astrophysics degree, and now I get to do this full time. And yeah, so the reason we're here, our latest book is 110 Things to See with a Telescope with Chris Vaughan here. Yeah, Chris, how did you get involved with this project?
Well, John called me up one day, or actually sent me an email. I think you'd seen me running one of my Insider's Guide to the Galaxy broadcasts for Rask National. And we may have done Spring Galaxies, I think. It was Messier season. And you had this book just hitting for quite a while, and I guess you'd hit, a challenging spot and set it on the shelf until you were able to tackle it again. And you thought, well, maybe Chris could get me over the hill. And so I came on board to give you a hand. I think that's about how it went, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I started this book actually in 2017 or 2018. And between when I started this book and when this book got published, I actually published 5 books in between. So that's like procrastination in the extreme there. So yeah, so I did a whole bunch of books for Formac, including like the book about the space station, space missions that changed the world. We did 50 animals that have been to space and 50 things to see on the moon, which is a great one. But yeah, so at the end of all those, I was finally motivated. I finally figured I had enough chops to tackle the big project that I've been dreaming of doing for like quite some time, and that was to do the Messier list better than it had ever been done before. So, and I
Yeah,
think we
and the
pulled it
idea
off.
was, you wanted to do something that was not just for beginners. So a book that beginners could easily use, but as well as advanced people could incorporate into their observing programs and even earn their observing certificate.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, my goal with all things is to take something that was previously a little complicated and simplify it enough to bring it sort of down to what the beginner can handle. And so, my 3 goals in this book were make the best book that I could on the Messier objects, hopefully better than anything that had ever been done. I wanted it to be able to accomplish if someone who buys the book should be able to very easily and understandably tackle the Messier certificate with the RASC, and if they're in the States, the Messier program for the Astronomical League. And then number 3, just to have fun. So you should be able to open this book to any page, assuming you're in the correct season or the correct time of night, and see the object without much difficulty, and record your observation, all without having to turn the page.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
make it affordable too, right? You wanted to make it an affordable book that, parents or grandparents that might have somebody in the family with a telescope that's finished with the planets, finished with the moon, ready to tackle the mysteries of the universe and the other things you can see. The Messiers are ideal for that, but you need a guide to lead you by the hand and show you where they are. And this is the approach.
Yeah, exactly. So should we show people a couple pages?
Absolutely. So originally, when you reached out, I think your original plan for the book was more of a Messier marathon. Speaking of Denis's talk a little bit ago, a guide to running a Messier marathon, and so you'd ordered things in sort of that logical fashion.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea was dual purpose, so that you could run it as a marathon. So starting with the autumn targets and then ending with the autumn targets on the other side, the sort of the dawn autumn targets. But it turns out that the optimal order, if it's in the beginning of autumn or doing the autumn targets, is different than if you're in March doing the autumn targets. And so Chris was really helpful in sort of rethinking the book entirely in terms of the order, and doing it so that it was ordered optimally for each season, as if you're in the season. And then we put notes as you go. So if you're doing a marathon, well, here's the order that you would do if you're doing the marathon. So yeah.
Or if you have a clear evening and you've got a really good long observing window, something like winter, you could knock the Messier objects off on a good winter evening and just follow the order we've given you, so that you catch the ones that set in the west first and then work your way across the sky to the later evening targets.
Absolutely. And you can see I think the latest video I posted on my YouTube channel, Learn to Stargaze, is a video of me going through all of the winter targets. And I always try to maximize the fun I have using the books and stargazing. And so I brought Tiffany Fields, who's an astrophysicist at St. Mary's, and we had a race. So I had to sketch all the winter targets in the same amount of time that she photographed all the winter targets. And so she had an astrophotography rig, and she was taking 1-minute exposures, and slewing and doing meridian flips and the whole thing. And I was sketching them. And so what was really neat about it, you'll have to see who wins, because it's kind of a trick win. But I don't know, it was just so much fun, and you'll have fun watching it. We edited it down to only 8 minutes, and you can see us go through all of winter and have a great time doing it.
Yeah, so we opened the book up with general information about Charles Messier and the origins of the list, and a bit about the telescopes that he used and the type of objects in the list. And then we go on and give you observing tips, planning, how to see dim objects, how to judge the seeing transparency, all the things that a beginner needs to bear in mind when you're tackling a big project like this.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is sort of a hurdle, at least for me, in approaching or applying for those certificates, is just knowing those fine details. Like when you record your observation, both RASC and the Astronomical League, they do request seeing and transparency. So just knowing how to record those, sort of from 1 to 5, that's detailed in the front of the book. And it's important to know that you need to record those, because like hypothetically, you review, you could view all the Messier objects and forget to note that, and then technically you wouldn't be eligible for your certificate. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why you have the slots on the page to remind everybody what to look out for.
Exactly.
So we've given folks tips for how to locate the objects. Generally, you'll see that each individual object has a Telrad ring on it, and we made special effort to make sure that the telrad placements are all very accurate, the bullseyes. So you should be able to use those, or just point your finder in the middle of where the dot would be. But John went. We prepared basic general information about the fun aspects of the object, tips on where how to star hop to it in many cases, and then John, talk about your photographs.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really wanted to do as a goal was to photograph all of the Messier objects consistently. And that was a bigger challenge than I thought it would be, because I was using the university's telescope, the Burke-Gaffney Observatory, but it can only go so low. And then so I had to open an account with, I think it was called Sierra Skies at the time, and it's no longer operational, but it was a remote observatory in Arizona. And so I was taking the rest of the images there, but we ended up, by the end of it, getting them all except for some of the really, really wide field ones. And then we ended up using digital sky survey. If you can see the screen here, to sort of get these really wide fields. But yeah, so at least 108 of the targets were all photographed consistently with these robotic telescopes, or some of the ones that are more wide field, like M8, for example. I used the Sharp Star telescope, which has a really wide field. And so it was neat to sort of go through the process of photographing them all as well for the book.
Now, one of your challenges, I think, when we first started talking was how to convey and tackle the Virgo cluster, which is Denis touched on earlier. And so that was really fun to work out a way to convey that in a reasonable, logical way.
This was definitely one of our biggest challenges. And you taught me something here that I never really had been able to articulate before, and that's the concept of galaxy hopping. And so you basically find, and I think you said you used M87, sort of like your brightest one, or you can use Macarian's chain, and sort of use that as your base of operations, and then hop down to the objects, and then go back, and then hop over, and then hop back. And then you also have to pay attention to what type of telescope you're using, right? So if you're using a Newtonian telescope, you have one view, but if your telescope is a refractor with a 90-degree diagonal, you're mirror reversed. So you're going to have to use another map, in which case we've provided both. And so you use the one that's appropriate for your telescope.
Very good. So why don't you talk a little bit about Tim Russ?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. So Tim did a talk with this center, I believe.
Yep.
And you had told me about this, and then I went and rewatched it, and I think you had proposed, because we were brainstorming people to use for the forward, and so Tim rose to the top of our list, and so I found his email on the internet, sent him a note, and he was so excited about the project and the book. He is an avid amateur astronomer. He volunteers at the Griffith Observatory. You can see him volunteering in some videos with Robert Picardi, I believe his name is. He played the Doctor in Voyager, the holographic Doctor. And so they have some comedic pieces there as they do STEM outreach with amateur astronomy. And so it was just neat. And so we exchanged a lot of emails back and forth to sort of get the forward just right. And it was a really cool experience, just because he was I'm a big Star Trek fan, so it was neat working with him on that. And then later on, I was working with Cyan Proctor on her book. So here's Cyan. So if you remember her from the Inspiration 4 mission, she was talking about how she wanted to get back into astronomy, but she wanted to do sort of the COVID protocol too, where you do astronomy, but project the image on an iPhone so people aren't all up at the eyepiece. And so Tim has one of these in telescopes, and that's how he does his astrophotography, because he's mostly a visual guy. And so I told Cyan to go reach out to Tim, and it was really neat because Tim was a huge fan of Cyan from both the Inspirational 4 mission and some other space documentaries that Cyan was in, before she became an Inspiration 4 astronaut. And so it was really neat to see them get together on that project as well, on being ambassadors for Intelescope.
Very cool.
Yeah, and so for anyone that doesn't know, so Cyan is an artist too, and this is the book that we put together the last couple months for her. And so this is all the art she did leading up to her space mission. And then you can see some of the art pieces that she did well on board the spacecraft. So this one here, and then this one here. And then I think they actually based the dragon wings off a drawing of hers as well, which that you get when you fly the Dragon spacecraft. So
Very cool. Very cool.
really cool.
So
connection.
where can people get the book?
Yeah, so people can get the book primarily on Amazon. The Amazon.com actually has a hardcover for $20.95. They're marking that down 40%, which is awesome. Get it in as many hands as possible. But you can also order it from the bookstores. I don't think they're stocking it except for Con Telescopes. Con Telescopes is stocking it.
Yeah.
You can go into chapters and order it if you want to go in store. But Amazon is probably the easiest. You'll get it the fastest that way.
And for local Rascals, Toronto Center members, I've got a number of the books as well at home here at home. So if anybody wants one, they can get one from me directly as well. So that's fine. Very good. And so it's really exciting. So I'm really proud of it. I think we did a great job. We tried to make it scientifically rigorous, but also easy to use. And we're looking for people to give it a try and put some reviews on Amazon, which would be great too. So
absolutely, authors really rely on those reviews because that pushes the book up in the algorithm, and so that more people are able to see it. So yeah, I mean, and Chris, this book wouldn't have been what it is if it wasn't for you. I mean, Chris went and took all my paragraphs, basically rewrote most of them, and just basically made it awesome. And so just an amazing person to work with. He definitely
my pleasure. It was fun, and you had a great design, and it really turned out really well. Let's see if there are any questions.
All right, thanks, guys. That's fantastic. Emma, do we have any questions?
We sure do. We actually got a couple of comments as well. So first one is a comment from Alex, and he says, John, I'm a novice, got my first scope about 2 weeks ago, and I happen to have just picked up this book. Made my first entry in the book for M36 on Saturday.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Second comment comes in from Mark Whitesell. Got 110 things booked the other week, very well organized, and the simulated eyepiece views are great for amateurs unfamiliar with the object. Looking forward to using this book with my young daughters.
Great.
Okay, first question. What age do you need to be in order to be eligible for an observing certificate?
Oh, there are no age limits.
No.
Yeah, if you can accomplish it, they'll give you a certificate. Yeah.
The only thing you have to watch out for is it is an individual project. So, if you've got kids that want to do the program, they each have to have their own log. They each have to make their own observations and submit separately. But,
yeah. And if you do have kids, if you want to share my screen again, I've got a book that I'm trying to get out in the next few months here. This is Learn to Stargaze Kids. And the neat thing about this one is that as you observe, you check the boxes at the bottom for each item. And hypothetically, you should be able to meet all the requirements for Explore the Universe. So that's RASC's very first observing program that they recommend you do first if you're just getting started.
Nice.
And so this is so look out for this project. It's been a lot of fun to work with the artist and get this suitable for kids and get them earning certificates too.
Fantastic.
Great. Next question. How do you know the seeing conditions? Using Stellarium or some other app?
Yeah, so we had a little diagram here that can help out. I usually, for seeing, you rate them from 1 to 5. And if you can see the little chart here, so 1 is the best, and that's where stars are pinpointy, and 5 is the worst, and that's where they're really, really twinkly. And transparency, the way that you can estimate that is the magnitude of the dimmest star you can see with your eye. So you would look up, see the dimmest star you can see, and then if you look at a star chart or something and see that, that's a magnitude 4 star, then your transparency would be 4. Or you can pull it right off an app like Astrospheric. It'll say what it is.
And bear in mind that the observing program reviewers aren't expecting you to have, scientifically accurate scenes. Some of it's subjective. It's
Yeah,
what
it's
you
very
felt it
subjective.
was. Was the object sharp as a tack? Was it swimming? Were the stars twinkling, or were they steady? Just give a general sense of it, whether it's poor or good. And it also helps you because if you observed an object when the sky was really poor, you may be inclined to go back and check it on a night where the sky is really good and see more that you missed the first time.
Mm. But after you do a couple numbers, it gets pretty quick. So like if it's perfect, 1.5, and you're, that's good enough. Yeah. At least I think that's good enough.
Great. So someone else is asking if you can provide the link to the YouTube competition where you sketched and your friend was taking photos.
Oh yeah, so the YouTube channel is just Learn to Stargaze with 2 spelled T-O, not with the number, and it should be the most recent video. But yeah, we can find a link for that.
Great.
One of us will put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Perfect. If you take a wide field image of the Markarian chain and capture multiple targets in one image, do they all count, or would you have to center each one for them to count?
Well, so you need to. It's a visual certificate. So ideally, what you would do is look at them one at a time and sketch them. So you can't use a camera and count them that way. Yeah, it's got to be visual.
And you can use for RASC for the RASC programs, you can do it with or without a GoTo telescope. You need to specify, and you can't mix and match. So it's either all GoTo or either if you used GoTo for any of it, then you get the GoTo certificate. If you use the GoTo for none of it, then you earn that sort of more difficult achievement. And yeah, you do need to. You don't have to sketch, but you should make remarks about what you noticed about each of the objects because they're different. They're different shapes, different characteristics. So note those down.
Yeah, and to clarify, in the video I use star sense, which is I'm pushing the telescope manually, but it counts as GoTo because the phone is electronically showing me where to push it. And so that doesn't count as the visual certificate. That would be the GoTo certificate if you're using star sense or similar technology.
Great. Thank you. Next question comes in from Gary. What is the minimum size reflector or refractor to get most use out of this book?
So we recommend 4 inches as the minimum, and mainly that's so you can see the dimmest globular clusters, which are some of the most challenging. And so I brought this telescope up as an example. I know this one has been in stock at Costco. I don't think they make it anymore, but for some reason they had a ton of inventory. This is a Celestron Omni 102 AZ, and it has slow motion controls. It's got your 4 inches of aperture. It's easy to point. It comes with a red dot finder. And so this would sort of be your basic telescope for doing the Messiers. You might want to upgrade to a Plössl eyepiece just to get a better view. Plössl, they have a lot of glass in them, provide a lot of very, very easy on the eyes versus the little ones that come with the telescope.
But Messier saw these objects in a smaller telescope. He just had really good sky conditions. So if you live in a rural site with lots of dark sky, then you don't need a larger telescope.
Yeah. So the ideal scope would be a Dobsonian, like an 8-inch Dobsonian. You could really fly through them and see them really clear, assuming dark skies.
Yeah.
But the question for sort of the minimum, I would say something like this.
That's great. This next one's a comment. Afrofuturism. Great to see it being discussed. It's so cool to see art made from space.
Yeah, Cyan is a wonderful person. You should all follow her on Instagram. She goes daily and talks to sort of her fans on Instagram, and it's really neat. Cool. And you could do her Patreon too, and she'll send you a postcard every month of her latest astrofuturism drawing.
Wow, that's really cool. The next question comes in from John. As a content creator, did Learn to Stargaze
find its audience, or did it take a while?
Yeah.
It's still finding its audience. So it's a lot of work to run a YouTube channel. So right now I'm just coming up on 7,000 subscribers. But if you look at sort of similar channels, they're in the hundreds of thousands. So yeah, so I've had a full-time videographer for the past 4 months, and so it's been really fun to sort of build it as sort of a brand, and raise the quality as we go.
Yeah, sorry, I misread that the first time. Just for anyone who didn't catch what the question was, it was, as a content creator, did Learn to Stargaze immediately find its fitting astronomer audience, or did it take a while? Thank you for your answer, though.
Yeah, work in progress.
Next up, we have a question from Paul Markov. Are you already thinking about your next book? If so, what's the subject?
Yeah, so the next one has been this the kids one that's no telescope required, that enables you to earn that Explore the Universe certificate with the RAS. Now, some of the targets require binoculars, and there's quite an intensive double star requirement for Explore the Universe. But I think, with the help of a parent, at least showing them where to point the binoculars, the child would still need to make the observation. But I think we can get a lot more young people doing the Messier program, and that with that book as a guide, I think it'll help. And so that's my next project right there.
That's great. Warren wants to know, how do you sketch many objects in the dark?
Yeah, so I wear a red flashlight on my head, and I find that when I look in the eyepiece, it sort of shines over the scope, and it doesn't. I thought I had it here on my desk. Anyway, yeah, that works for me. And then as soon as I look down at the book, it's got just enough light that I could sketch it. The funny thing is, though, sometimes I think I'm doing such a good job at night, and then if I look at the sketches during the day, they're not as good as I thought I did. So that's been kind of interesting.
Yeah. I have a red LED light with a gooseneck with a USB, and I can plug it into one of the the little battery packs and just gooseneck it over my logbook, and then I have red light shining on my logbook.
Great. That seems to be it for the questions. We have a couple of comments left. Westlake says, looks like a terrific book. Congratulations. Harold says that he really enjoyed the presentation. And we got a comment from Paul who says, during a Messier marathon, I was able to see 60 Messier objects with an 8x50 finder.
And that's a good point. So you can see the objects, about half of them, with binoculars. Some people claim to see a lot more than half. But the advantage of having the 50 millimeter finder is that you can see the objects in the finder before you go to the eyepiece. And so sometimes, on my Dobsonian, I have the 50 millimeter finder and the Telrad side by side. So you can sort of do both.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's it for the questions and comments for tonight.
Fantastic.
Thanks again, John and Chris. Sounds like a lot of fun. Well done, guys. All right, so let's move on to our next speaker, Denis Zaytsev, who will talk to us about the 30-meter telescope, the new generation of ground-based observatories. Go ahead, Denis.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me for such a nice event. My name is Denis Zaytsev. I am located in Pasadena, California, and I work on our TMT project. TMT is 30-meter telescope, and it's a topic for my presentation today. So we're going to talk about the new generation ground-based observatory, and our example of this kind of observatories is going to be the TMT project. So before I just go, I want to introduce myself a little bit more. I used to live in Canada. That's how I appeared to be RASC member. Then I relocated to Pasadena, California for job to work on TMT. That's why I talk to you from the Pacific Coast. Okay, let's go ahead. So just a bunch of quick facts about the project, so you'll have some context and some generic information about the TMT. use slideshow. Sorry. Okay. Is it better now? Okay. So thank you very much for helping, because I don't see what you see. Okay. So as I mentioned, the project started in 2004. You might think it's pretty old project, but for this scale, it's actually pretty young. And if you think about it, for instance, JWST took more than 20 years to build and launch. So it's international project. This is something interesting about TMT. TMT is a result of collaboration of several countries, including Canada, United States. United States is represented as for now by 2 universities, Caltech and UCLA, Japan, India, and China. Speaking about their optical design, TMT is going to be Richie Chrétien. So if you have, like me, one of these designs, you should know that you have telescope which look exactly the same as the biggest telescopes in the world. TMT stands for 30-meter telescope, so it's for real 30-meter diameter primary mirror. We're gonna talk more in details about this mirror on next slides. Also, let me point, TMT has the secondary mirror at the top, and third mirror, tertiary mirror, which is 2.5 by 3.5 meters. It's totally flat. And we're going to see the optical path a little bit later. Don't be confused. So you're going to see how it all goes. I know it's hard to understand how it's going to work and how light is going to be collected and where is the camera. We're going to see it on next slides. Talking about f ratio, it's f15 final focal ratio. So it's pretty slow optic, and you might imagine high magnification, and you want to see far away. That's why. Talking about their band of wavelength, TMT will be sensitive to. It's starting from ultraviolet to near infrared. So basically, everything we see, visual band, UV, little bit UV, and near infrared. Also, if you think about resolution of their TMT, it's 2 times of Hubble Space Telescope, and this is where you start thinking and why, and their aperture is everything, of course. So the resolution proportional to the diameter of aperture, and here we go. Talking about the status of the project, so I want to mention that construction on the site haven't started yet, but many major and critical systems are ready for construction or already started being built or in active prototyping. So the process is going. We plan 3 first light instruments, or that would be IRIS, WFOS, and MODIS. I'm not gonna tell you what they mean because it's very long. Just you need to understand that TMT instruments will be spectrographs, and their most science value comes from spectrography. And their IRIS is infrared imaging spectrograph, for instance. That's what it stands for. WFOS is wide field optic spectrograph, and MODIS is multi-objective high definition imaging, high definition infrared spectrograph. So when it's going to be alive, our expectations that first light is going to be somewhere in 2030s, and we are very positive about it. And when we build it and commission this observatory, it's going to be biggest ground-based observatory in Northern Hemisphere, and probably in the world for some time. Depends if European extremely large telescope is being built or not by the time TMT is commissioned. The European extremely large telescope is being built in Southern Hemisphere, north of Chile. So we're gonna compete for the world biggest one, and then we're gonna hold the world biggest one in Northern Hemisphere for sure. Okay, so that's quick facts. Let's move forward and let's talk a little bit about construction side. So for this scale of observatories, it's very important to build observatory in a place on our Earth where atmosphere is very stable, dry, and cold. And there are not too many places, to be honest, around Earth like that. Our TMT performed very comprehensive research. I think it took 5 years to go around the world, and our TMT team picked 2 spots, the best ones. And we see here on the screen Mauna Kea, Hawaii, at elevation more than 4 kilometers. This is our preferred site. And on this picture, on the top right, we see La Palma, Canary Island, with on elevation 2 kilometers and 250 meters, about that. They are basically the same in terms of characteristics. They have differences and they have different conditions, but they both are really good to build this kind of observatory. And you can tell this just by looking at the picture here at La Palma and Mauna Kea Summit, how many observatories already built there. This is what we have right now. So that points that is probably a good place. Okay. However, I wanted to mention that final decision about the site for their TMT observatory is not made yet. And hopefully it's going to be made soon. Let's move to the next one. So on this slide, I want to present you the results of Astra 2020 Decadal Survey published by National Academies for Science, Engineering, and Medicine. It's a very big event because it's basically a roadmap with priorities and vision for the next 10 years in astronomy and astrophysics. So I'm very proud and happy to announce that TMT was identified in this survey as the highest ground-based priority for the next decade as a member of US LTP program. US LTP program, you can see on the right this picture. It's a joint effort of TMT and another extremely large telescope, GMT, Giant Magellan Telescope, which is going to be built in Chile. And if we build both, then we're going to have extremely large telescope GMT in southern hemisphere and extremely large telescope in northern hemisphere, which is much better for science. And as part of the survey, it was recommended for National Science Foundation to fund the TMT project, which is really a good milestone for TMT project. If we get funds from National Science Foundation, their TMT won't need any funds up until the end of construction. So it's very, very good for us. Okay, let's move forward to the mirror. So ELT stands for Extremely Large Telescope. And the size of the mirror is 30 meters. Here, to compare and give you some sense of the size, we see their basketball court. And here there is a little guy. This is the size of the person to scale. So you see it's pretty big structure. And you might think how we're going to build it. Of course, it's impossible to build in one piece that big mirror. So it all started with Keck telescope, and our Keck telescope is a 10-meter telescope with a segmented mirror, and it's already proven technology, and the most importantly, it's scalable technology to build segmented mirrors. So if you build 10-meter segmented mirror, you can build 3 times more using the same technology. In case of TMT, we have 492 segments. That's segments our primary mirror consists of. And if you count also spare segments, it's going to be 574. 82 different types of mirrors. The size of one hexagon piece is 1.44 across corners. 45 millimeter thick glass ceramic, and we're going to have 2.5 millimeter gaps between segments, which is going to be about 0.6% loss of light. So yeah, it's a big thing, and again we're reusing the technology used in Keck, but that doesn't mean it's very easy, because the size matters. The bigger size gets, the more complex systems to support this size observatory. So let's move forward, and here I want to show you their rendering or simulation of light path. I'll try to comment as it goes. So here we see the light coming through the opening directly from zenith, collected to the secondary mirror, then bounced to the M3, and M3 delivers their prime focus to different instruments. So see, it's moving, delivering to some of the first generation instruments, and I believe this video also contains second generation instruments. So again, to recap, the TMT is pointed right now directly to the zenith, and their light goes that way, gets reflected and collected by the main mirror M2, goes to M1. Sorry for confusion. So light gets collected by M1, the main mirror, and there comes to M2, and then M2 sends light to M3 here in the middle, and M3 points it to their instruments. It's a little bit different from the classical Ritchie-Chrétien, because our telescopes, they have opening in the main mirror, and just light goes to the visual bag or to a camera. But here we don't do this. We just point it to their instrument. But in terms of optical design, and the same thing. All right, let's move to their enclosure. So Canada participating in TMT as a partner, and one of their contributions from Canada is enclosure design and production. The enclosure is designed by Empire Dynamic Structures from BC, Canada, managed by Canadian National Research Council. The enclosure itself have a unique calotte design. This is not something you're going to see in other observatories. It's very unique, and I believe it's a very good fit for their TMT in terms of characteristics required for that size of telescope. Speaking about size, the dome itself is going to be 180 feet high. So you can imagine 10-story building or apartment building, and this is the size. Their enclosure design passed production readiness reviews in 2020, and it's ready for production. So we're going to start manufacturing pieces very soon, and they will be waiting to be delivered on site for assembly. Here we see their enclosure exploded view. You can see that basically 3 pieces: the base with their rotation axis here, another piece is a cup with the rotation axis that way. And also we have shutter here. It's very specific design. I understand it's not easy to picture yourself how it's working. So on next slide, we're gonna actually see it in action. You see the shutter opens. We see their base is moving, and we see the cup is rotating. And here we go. We see their mirror, and their target acquisition is done. Also on picture, you can see these vents. These vents are especially designed to guarantee their perfect ventilation for the observatory. All right, let's move to the next one. Another contributions from Canada, I think the most important maybe component for instruments to do science is a narrow field infrared adaptive optics system, or for short Nefarious. Don't think about Dr. Nefario from the Spectral Me. It's Nefarious with S at the end. So it's designed in a collaboration with NRC, National Research Council, Herzberg Astronomy and Astrophysics, in their Victoria, BC. Adaptive optics for the first slide, infrared instruments, IRIS and MODIS. Adaptive optics, what it makes are very valuable and very capable in terms of science. TMT without adaptive optics would be just telescope, big telescope. But with adaptive optics, it's going to be a very powerful telescope. I'm going to explain it in the next slides why. Or on this slide as well. Adaptive optics main mission is to correct aberrations introduced by the atmospheric turbulence in real time. You probably know that our Mother Earth protects us from radiation pretty well, and we can observe their light coming to us only through two windows, basically. One window is a visual band, and the other window is a radio band. Fortunately, we also have a little bit of infrared coming through the atmosphere. So this is where TMT shines. And another thing is turbulence. They're looking through the atmosphere from Earth is basically like looking from the bottom of the swimming pool to the sky. So it's all blurry. Adaptive optics, it's your prescription and your glasses to not see it, stop seeing it blurry and start seeing it sharp. Adaptive optics operates at up to 800 Hertz, and it relays the corrected light from telescope to science instruments. So science instruments, they receive corrected light. So let me introduce very simplified schema how it all works. So we can see that light is coming from the telescope to the mirror, then it gets reflected, and at the beam splitter, it's split it in two beams. One goes to wavefront. Wavefront senses these atmospheric aberrations introduced by atmospheric turbulence, and control system makes decision how to correct it, and deforms the mirror. After that, we have corrected wavefront coming through their optical train to the imaging sensors. So you might ask how we see their changes and how we understand what to correct. So adaptive optics uses laser guide star facility to do that. Laser guide star facility, or LGSF for short, generates a pattern of guiding stars in the sky. It's basically artificial asterism, and you can see it in the mesospheric sodium layer. So adaptive optic system senses changes in this pattern and analyzes it and corrects them with deformable mirror. So that's how we do it. So let's see some adaptive optics in action. Here we see their Mars imaged in I-band, and we see on that side their simplified schema of adaptive optics. Aberrated wavefront coming to their mirror, and with flat mirror, you can see it's all blurry. However, with deformable mirror, you see corrected wavefront. It's like person first time trying glasses, basically. I can tell you, because that's what I experienced when I was a kid. After I first time put on my glasses. Okay, let's move to another example in action. So the second example, again, is from the real life, and this example is from the Keck Observatory, where we can use adaptive optics. So on the left, we see Neptune without adaptive optics. You can see this glowing blob, and it's very hard to understand anything. We see some features, but not a lot. So on the right, we have the same picture, but with adaptive optics in action. So the main idea behind building their new instruments for science, new observatories, is to open new window in the universe. And their TMT, with its capabilities and resolution plus adaptive optics, actually does that, opening new window and to see universe in a different way nobody else would be able to see before. We have some simulations, or I'm going to show on next slide the simulations. This is how it's going to look like. The simulations are done by our colleagues from UCLA. So Neptune, again, seeing limited, not too much to see in the telescope. And I would say you'll be lucky if you see Neptune like that on telescope, just regular telescope. With Keck, we can see much more. However, if we look at their TMT compared to Keck, and this is simulation, of course, we don't have TMT right now, but we can simulate it using software. And we can see TMT compared to Voyager 2. This is the actual picture from Voyager 2, and this is simulation for TMT, how it's going to look like. And that brings us to a conclusion that with this size of telescope and their instrumentation powered by adaptive optics, we don't necessarily need their space missions to explore the solar system. Okay, let's go to, I have another simulation. This time is a simulation of Io. So on the left, again, it's done by our colleagues at UCLA, the simulation of our TMT in the middle, TMT using iris or instrument in H-band, compared to Keck with adaptive optics, and compared to Galileo spacecraft. So you can see how much features TMT will allow us to see in our solar system. And this is just blows mind of everybody. That's why people are waiting for this scale of observatories. New observations are gonna give more data to prove theories and to ask new questions and apply this data to existing models. So everybody's waiting, and we're gonna have it very soon. This is not the last one. I have something to show about deep space. So this is simulation done by UCLA team of M31 are center of the galaxy. And on the left, so both squares are approximately, I would say, 6 arc seconds field of view wide. We see Hubble Space Telescope image, and we see simulation how it's gonna look like exactly the same object with the same field of view through the TMT iris instrument. You can actually research and measure stars in the center of the galaxy now. So yes, that's another amazing example of capabilities of TMT observatory in the future. And that's pretty much it. At the very end, I wanted to show you there again rendering of TMT. Let's just look at it and enjoy. Imagine that we are already there and TMT is already built. Here we go, our main mirror. You can see a treasury mirror. And we can see acquiring target and process. And we're going to see adaptive optics in action. This is our LGSF, Laser Guide Star Facility. So yeah, that's the TMT project. If you have any questions, you can ask in QA right now. And also there is tons of information on this website, tmt.org. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Denis. That is absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad I reached out to you and you just happened to be working on this project. So thanks again for bringing us up to speed. Emma, do we have questions for Denis?
We do. First question comes in from Ralph. Are the gaps between segments to allow for thermal expansion?
Well, I have to say that I'm not an expert in their optics, but as far as I know, all these are factors taken in account. So their TMT main mirror, all these 492 segments are going to be controlled in real time by the computer system, and it will be measured in real time and corrected in real time. And their mirror is going to be reacted into all our factors like change in temperature, stuff like that. Yeah.
Great. Warren wants to know, are there plans to add any other stations off of M3?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. Warren wants to know, are there plans to add any other stations off of M3?
Stations of M3. I assume the question is about instruments.
Yeah.
Okay. So we plan to build the TMT and have first light with 3 instruments. After that, we have plans to add next generation, I believe 3 more instruments. So it's going to be extended over time, and the TMT is built in that way to be extendable. So I hope it answers the question.
Great. Harold, so this is not a question, but it's a comment. Harold says, that's an amazing system.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Warren. How much deflection is there over the total diameter in each mirror?
Each mirror is 1.44 meter. So I'm not sure about deflection. I can direct this question to our optics team. Again, I'm software engineer and I can answer more about software. Well, you see telescope at my background. I can answer other questions, but I can follow up on that.
Great. Ron wants to know, Webb will need 3 months to get all of its 18-mirror segments arranged properly aligned. Would the land-based TMT process need more or less time than that?
I don't know, to be honest, because here we come into the world of assembly and integration. And this is something going to happen only at the very, very final stages of TMT construction. I believe our process, even having the much bigger number of segments than we have right now on other telescopes, our process of aligning will be faster and easier. It's a ground-based observatory. We can always come and fix something, or we can patch software, and our aligning process will be powered in great extent by software as well. So yeah, I expect it's not going to take a long time.
Cool. Next question comes in from Brian. How will the James Webb Space Telescope resolution and capabilities compare to the 30-meter telescope?
Well, James Webb Telescope is, of course, smaller, but let's don't forget that James Webb Telescope is in the space. So we have two different situations, and they're gonna complement each other. I think I'm gonna answer it like that. You can calculate the resolution of the difference in resolution just by ratio of the diameters JWST to the TMT. That's what you're gonna get, how bigger or smaller the resolution would be, but they're not gonna compete, they're gonna complement each other. The TMT is gonna follow up on finds done by JWST.
Great. This next question comes in from Paul. You mentioned you're a software engineer. What software do you work on?
Oh, thank you for this question. So TMT, you might imagine, is a system of systems, and there are lots of independent components, hardware components are working simultaneously and are at the same time. So to orchestrate and control all these independent components, you need software, and that software is called observatory software. It's basically brains for their observatory, and this kind of software we are working on. That includes development kit for their other teams who are developing instruments and different subsystems. And also this development kit includes special instrumentation to integrate with each other. Plus, our observatory software provides observatory control system. And as part of it is sequencing. Every observation is basically a sequence of actions. Do this, that, or say, acquire target, focus to target, start exposure, end exposure, change filter, start another exposure, these kind of things. This is sequencing. So software I'm working on is one of these components also. Plus, I wanted to mention the acquiring their science data, it's not end of the story. After you get exposure, after you get science frame, as we name it, you need to pass it through data reduction system. You need to pass it through different systems to collect metadata and attach it to their science exposure, so scientists will understand the conditions this exposure was done. and they will have metadata associated with the science frame required for their calculations and their analysis and etc. So this kind of software is also developed by the team or I'm working in.
That's very cool. Betty wants to know, how much computational power will the adaptive optics system require?
Oh, well, it requires very powerful computational array. We use their computational system based on GPU. So it's almost like machine learning hardware, the same probably technologies. So yeah, it's very powerful.
Great. That's it for the questions for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for questions.
Thanks again, Denis. Great presentation, and thanks to our other presenters, Chris and John and Denis Grey. So that concludes the speakers lineup for this evening. Let's move on to our president, Tom Luton, with the announcements for tonight. We've got some technical difficulties. Yeah, so we're going to go to some fun facts for a moment. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that, folks. A little microphone trouble there. Anyway, so yeah, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and let's get into our announcements. So, we have two types of meetings here online on YouTube. We've got our Recreational Astronomy nights, and in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have one of our speakers' nights. For those of you who have joined us live, thank you for doing so. In the future, if you're coming back again, please take an opportunity to say hi in the YouTube chat, enter some questions for our presenters. If you're a new member, please introduce yourself. And if you're coming from outside of the Toronto area, let us know where you're from. And by the way, I'm presenting to you guys from my place in Toronto. So our next speaker's night, like I said, is in 2 weeks. Shamira Andres, who's a planetary geophysics PhD student at York University and a science communicator, will be discussing exploring the Martian cryosphere, a treasure map of ice on Mars. So here live on YouTube. And then coming up 2 weeks after that, at our next Recreational Astronomy Night meeting on the 6th of April, Andy Beaton will be doing the sky this month. And as you can see here, we've got 2 empty presentation slots. So if you've got an idea for something that you'd like to present, please contact Paul Markov. Just a heads up, the Toronto Centre Council will be having a meeting on the 8th of March at 7:30 p.m. It's online, but it's members only. If you're interested in attending, please drop me a note to get the details. Coming up at the DDO in the next few weeks, on March 11th, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. is Astronomy Speakers Night. There's a $12.50 registration fee. Links can be found at raskto.ca. On Sunday, March the 13th, from 1 to 2 p.m., Chris Vaughan is hosting Ask an Astronomer, $5.65 fee. During March break at the DDO, on Monday, March the 14th at 2 p.m., is Out of This World, the Solar System, $12.50 registration fee. And then on 2 afternoons, on Tuesday, March 15th, and also on March 17th, Thursday, is Sun Fun with a $10 fee. Links to all for registration for all of these can be found at raskto.ca. And then wrapping up the month at the DDO on March 27th, Sunday stargazing. The fee for this one is $6.78, and again, the links are at raskto.ca. I'm pleased to announce that we are having a series of first light meetings. If you've joined the RASC Toronto Centre in the last year, and because of COVID, we haven't been able to have any of our orientation get-togethers. So we'd like to welcome you to the society and provide information about who we are and what we actually do, and a chance to get to know you and to know each other. So this is a free program, but it's for members only, and it covers 3 nights, March 22nd, March 29th, and April 5th, 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Free. You can register online, raskto.ca. Main topics will be orientation to the RASC Toronto Centre activities, astronomy on a budget, astrophotography, and the certificate programs. Certificate programs like these. So if you've been working hard, or if you haven't even started, the Toronto Centre, as part of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, has a number of observing certificates. Sorry about that. Chris Vaughan Chris and John earlier on mentioned the Messier, but we've also got Explore the Universe, Exploring the Moon through binoculars or telescopes, the finest new general catalog deep sky objects, double stars, the Isabel Williamson Lunar Certificate, Deep Sky Gems, and Deep Sky Challenge. More details on all of these can be found at www.rask.ca/certificate-programs. Once again, our observing sessions are still closed until further notice. Bayview Village Park, Long Sault Conservation Area, and the Ontario Science Centre. The Carr Astronomical Observatory is open. However, there are currently parking restrictions in place that make getting there a little difficult. As well, the road is currently clogged with snow. If you are interested in going up, please read all details on the CAO booking website before signing up. This is where I get to plug RASC membership. You can sign up, you can join us, or you can renew online at secure.rask.ca. If you're a longtime member who's run into some financial difficulties, the RASC does have an emergency fund. It's fully confidential. Details on that and also on gift memberships are available at mempub@rask.ca. And with that, I'd like to wish you all a very pleasant evening. I want to thank you all for joining us. Please follow us on all the various forms of social media that we've got listed here. If you like what you saw here on YouTube, please subscribe, give us a like, hit the notification bell. Stay safe, keep looking up, and have a good evening. Take care.